Hi, and welcome to our second episode of the Curbside Chat, the video podcast series where we talk about the important issues of the aftermarket with the people who make it happen. Our host, Susan Hitchon, will have a curbside conversation with a guest from the industry who will give their perspective on a particular topic. Meanwhile, I'll be moderating our live Q&A via Slido. So please send your questions via the QA tab. We would like to take the opportunity also to acknowledge our sponsors for supporting the Curbside Chat podcast. This show would not be possible without your corporate support. Now, let me introduce our host, the chairman of AIA Canada, Susan Hitchon. Good morning, Susan.
Hi, good morning, JF, and hello to everybody in the audience. Thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to a small introduction into today's topic. I reviewed our 2019 membership survey that we did back in the fall, late fall last year, and there was a clear indication that our membership was interested in AIA getting involved with various parties in our industry or throughout Canada to either regulate or certify automotive repair shops in the best interest of the consumer driver. So today's topic is about the potential for shop certification in Canada, what that might look like, any progress made to date on this topic, and possible next steps. So who better to have that conversation with than Steve Leal. I'm happy to introduce Steve Leal, president at Fix Network World and a current member of our board of directors. Welcome to the Curbside, Steve.
Thanks, Susan. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining us. I know we've had this conversation a few times around the board table, and you've provided some good feedback and update on the progress or position that's being made right now for shop certification. And so I wanted to get into that with you today. And just first off, can you tell us why we're having this conversation today? Tell us about shop certification.
Well, I think like many people in the industry, shop certification has been talked about for many, many years. And I think, it's an important thing to bring the automotive industry to a higher level. And I think it's something that's been missing between all the segments in the automotive aftermarket. So for us, we wanted to make sure that it's how we find the best way to get through this and what are the points of attack for AIA to support to get some sort of certification starting in the Canadian landscape.
And there is a project underway right now, or an initiative underway right now, is there? And can you tell us about that and who's all involved in that initiative?
Yeah, I think for us is finding the best way to get government buy-in for a certification program. We felt on the collision side that you have many stakeholders involved that would be able to benefit from this certification process. So we felt on the collision side would probably be the best avenue, specifically that AIA is also in charge in Canada of the ICAR training, so as a training platform. So we felt we already had a model developed with all the industry stakeholders that would have a better chance for us to work through, and involving the insurance industry, the collision industry, and all the other stakeholders for information from the OE side, that everyone had a common interest for some sort of certification on the collision side.
So folks at the table then, just to reiterate, you've involved the OEs in the conversation, government at provincial or federal levels?
At the provincial level, we've been working on it because in Canada, every province has its own regulation to determine certification, and insurance regulations is done by province. So for us to get a certification, it has to be province at a time.
And so also at the table, you have, so I said government, insurance companies are involved, OEs involved, yourself, and others from the collision network as well?
Yeah, we try to bring all the stakeholders in the collision industry together to say, the shop certification is important for all the stakeholders that really want to elevate the business. The goal is to get away, if you've probably seen in the news in Ontario, these towing and chase shops with collision. We see that as for all of us, everyone involved, it doesn't make sense to have fly-by-night shops not trained and not repairing cars properly. So you can see it's elevating in the government of Ontario even higher as we speak, right?
So when we talk about shops not repairing vehicles properly, so that is that is in the clear interest of the consumer driver, correct?
Yeah, I think, for the consumers, especially on the collision side of things, to give you an example is, these chase and fraudulent companies and increasing the fees for insurance companies eventually increases the premiums for everyone in the province of Ontario. So it's an interest of the insurance companies to try and control to make sure that we have certified facilities that have some level of training that proper repairs are being done and remove a lot of the fraud that's in our industry, right? I would say consumers, it's no different than they have in the restaurant industry. If you go across Ontario, the government created a platform for inspectors to inspect restaurants to make sure the standards of quality of food and cleanliness happens in the restaurants. So we don't have something similar on the automotive side.
Mm-hmm. And one topic completely different than this is underperformed maintenance. We know that that's an issue in our industry in general, and that consumers don't necessarily follow the recommendations of their technician or their ASP to have maintenance performed. It would make sense that having a repair industry, collision industry certified, that all the maintenance or repair work would be done to a certain standard for the safety of the consumer driver.
Yeah, I think it's very important on the mechanical side to have this as well. I think the reason why we picked to start it on the collision side is the stakeholders that are involved, and the training platforms are already created and it's right there. So we're hoping that that model creates to the mechanical side. Obviously, the government see that's what we did on the collision side. Can this relate to the mechanical and even the glass side to make sure that training standards are high and certification to make sure proper repairs are being done to the vehicle, and the consumers are making sure that they're keeping their repairs and the maintenance of the vehicles up to high standards for safety on the road.
Mm-hmm. That just makes sense for everyone in my view. What is AIA's role in this matter? What value does this bring to our AIA membership?
I think by AIA being one of the groups spearheading this is lobbying to the government and educating them on this factor. I think now the AIA taking a more active role in the government relations, and I think they have a very key position at the AIA because of the training platforms it already has, that it makes sense to have a nonprofit organization lead this through into the government and create what we call a model like they have in the electrical industry from the ESA, or kind of like a DA model, that it's governed by the industry and performed by a nonprofit, but involving all the stakeholders. And I think AIA is pushing that forward and should be the leader in my view to make sure this is able to get over the line, right?
And the current status of the initiative right now, what is the current status?
I think there's been a lot of activity over the last 2 years. I think things were really progressing forward with a lot of government relations from AIA and working with the government and some of the lobbyist groups. Unfortunately, COVID hit, I think put us on kind of a little bit of back burner. But I would say in speaking to some members at AIA that are involved and some of the government relations people, that it's coming back to fruition here for the fourth quarter. I think it's definitely at the top priority of one of the initiatives of the Ontario government, and we're hoping that in fourth quarter we can start progressing it and at least get it to the point that they get over the finish line. How the framework looks, that's still to determine, but definitely get over their head for the government that we need some sort of certification on that side. And once they agree to that, then the next steps are a lot of work at that point. But I think we're very close to getting the government to realize that they need some sort of certification in this side.
So the next step is really more discussion, review with the provincial government.
Yeah, I think in September, October, it's going to heat back up. It's on everyone's radar. I think we've done a great job to bring it to the highest level of government, all the way to the finance minister of Ontario and everyone interested in, and all the stakeholders. We've been communicating with the consumer affairs, so I think it's a top priority now of the government. When things come back to a bit to normal, I think definitely it's something that they're going to tackle.
And what do you see as the long game here? Do you have, or can you guesstimate when this might come through to fruition?
I wish I had a crystal ball to give
Right.
exact date, but I think we're a lot of work's done over 2 years. These things take a long time, but I definitely think by fourth quarter it will heat up, and I would look to have something of a similar DA model with the government that could be implemented in 2021. And I think to start onto it. So I don't think we're as far away as we were from 2.5, 3 years ago, but definitely, the interest at the parties of kind of, I think we have a very good shot by 2021 to come up with the new regulated model on the shop certification in the Ontario sector.
That sounds very encouraging. I know we are going to go to questions from the audience, but did you have anything you wanted to add to this conversation, Steve, before we go to that, or?
Well, I think for the members to understand, I think AIA, as an organization now is really pivoting to make sure of ways we can value everyone in the ecosystem. And I think representing the automotive aftermarket, I think it's elevated itself now with government relations. So I think on that side, the members should know that AIA is taking more of an active role of being engaged more with the government. I think that's what all of us members wanted the direction of AIA to go into. So we're all happy to see that, it's lobbying more and more to the government than it never has done before.
Right. Thank you for that. So before we wrap up, we are going to go to JF. Thanks very much, Steve, for your interesting comments. And we're going to go to JF, and he's going to check on the chat box. I'm sure we have some questions from our viewers.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. So yes, we do get a few audience questions for our guest, and again, please keep them coming via the Q&A tab on Slido. So a first question for Steve here: is certified shops recognized by the insurance industry?
I think our goal is to involve the insurance industry. So I think for them, they would love certification because it would prevent them from having to pay claims in fraudulent shops that they can't control. So I think for them, they're going to be very engaged. I think a lot of them positive to say if a shop's certified, that kind of blocks them from the fraud. So I think it's a very positive step for them. So I'm pretty sure they'll be behind to encourage it to only deal with certified facilities.
Great, Steve. Another question we heard is, are any other provinces open to this?
Yeah, there's been preliminary talks with a few of the provinces here in Canada, but we're channeling our effort right now to get it over the line on one province, and I think then we're going to spill out to the other provinces. Some provinces are more advanced than others, but as long as we get the first win, and I think Ontario being the biggest province, if we create a structure like that, definitely this is something that will be easy to replicate in other provinces, and discussions have been having with local MPs in those provinces. But we're channeling on one province for now and educating the other provinces as we're going about it.
Great. Maybe one more question we heard is also, is that going to increase insurance costs rather than reduce them, an end goal?
Well, I think on the insurance industry, what we look at is when they're dealing with the certified and credible shops, I think they're able to control their costs. The ones that can't control, these fraudulent ones, typically almost the claims tend to be 30 to 40% higher. So if you look at an insurance company, where it's able to deal 70% of its business, where it can control an environment versus 30% it can't, it's that 30% that becomes very expensive for them. And that in turn becomes expensive for all the policyholders in the province, right?
Well, thank you, Steve. There was one more question here, just 1 second. In terms of the insurance companies, when do you intend to reach out to them to gauge which directions they're going? Will this be determined ahead of time?
I think we've been actively bringing them along and let them know what's going on. We don't have a complete picture of how it will look, but we're involving the industry stakeholders. I think the insurance industry needs to be part of it. We want the buy-in from the people in the industry to make sure they're aware of what's going on. And same with the government. The government wants to make sure that it's bringing all the stakeholders to the table and having all different views on it. So I think the insurance industry is going to be heavily involved, and we've already been talking with them. So it's not new. It's been happening over a year, and I think it's been positive response so far.
Great. Thank you, Steve. To the audience, please keep the questions coming, and we'll get Steve to answer them after the show, and we'll post the answer on our Facebook page. I'm also going to run a quick poll right now via Slido, so please provide us with your feedback about the show. Also, there was one last question in regards to whether or not the video will be made available to participants after the chat, and the answer is yes, this will be made available on our website after the show. So now back to Susan. Let's jump into the rapid fire questions. Back to you, Susan.
Okay, this is the fun part, Steve. We have some rapid fire questions for you. You've probably seen these on celebrity shows, and Ellen DeGeneres does it, but I'm not Ellen. But we're going to give you a few questions. You answer them quickly, honestly, first thing that comes to mind, and only a few words, not a long dissertation, just quick answer. Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Make and model of your first car.
Nissan Pulsar.
What was your first paying job?
Grocery boy at Nobile Farms.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Switzerland.
I know you traveled a lot, so I was interested in what you'd pick. What is your favorite thing about working in the auto industry?
I think all the talented people.
Great. Who would you want to play you in a movie of your life?
Whoa, that's a good one. Let's see. Kevin Costner.
What advice would you tell your 18-year-old self?
I would say listen to the elderly and wiser people to avoid as many mistakes as you come up.
What are you terrible at but love to do anyway?
I would say golf.
Okay. And that leads me into the last question. What professional sport would you like to play?
I've always been a fan of hockey.
Oh, sweet. That's great, Steve. Thank you so much for your participation and your quick answers. So to the rest of our viewers, please join us for our next podcast series. We'll introduce another industry expert on a new topic, so stay tuned for that later this summer. And I'm going to pass it back off to JF for closing the show.
Well, thank you, Susan, for being our host today, and special thanks to our guest, Steve Leal, for a great show. The subject of certifications of shop, I think, is an important one. Thank you very much for providing your insights about the directions that we're taking on the shop certification. As you indicated, AI Canada is dedicated and focused on supporting, obviously, the movement towards a shop certification. Also, please know that this podcast will be made available for playback on our website soon at aiacanada.com. Today's episode was brought to you by Canadian Tire, Drive Incorporated, NGK NTK, Wakefield, Brake Parts Inc., Lordco Parts Limited, Mann & Hummel, Spectra Premium Industries, Continental Tire Canada, Grote Industries, Mevotech LP, CarQuest Worldpack, and Bumper to Bumper. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.